Do you have any idea what makes a great fly shop great? And do you know what you need to do before entering a fly shop? Are you brand new and want to make sure to get the most out of your fly shop experience? And have you ever heard this advice? You don't know what you don't know, and how knowing this is going to help you improve your skills in fly fishing this year. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into fly fish food and the recent acquisition of Jimmy's All-Season Angler. And you're going to find out how knowing this is going to help you in your next fly shop excursion this year. This is Travel, where we take a deep dive into a specific region of the country so you have a better feel for what it takes to put together a great trip and how you can get better prepared for that next big trip. Hey, I'm Dave, host of Traveled and the Wet Fly Swing podcast. I've been fly fishing since I was a little kid. I grew up around a little fly shop and have created one of the largest podcasts in this country. I've also interviewed more of the great fly anglers than just about anyone in this country. Curtis Fry, co-owner at Fly Fish Food, is going to share some of the background on how they acquired Jimmy's Fly Shop and all the details around that and what makes a great fly tying shop. You're going to find out why the motto, "Don't be a is what they utilize in their daily activities and why you should be thinking about it. We're going to find out how they deal with vicious online feedback. And we're also going to get 3 big tips on preparing for your next visit to your local fly shop or a fly shop around the country, so you're better prepared, like we said, to jump into this. Plus, you're going to hear their growth strategy and how you can take away insights of scaling your own business if you're on that track as well. This episode of Traveled is presented by Yellowstone Teton Territory, where you can explore great fishing, hunting, hot springs, winter sports, and much more. Okay, let's jump into it and see where that road less traveled is going to take us today. Curtis Fry from flyfishfood.com. How you doing, Curtis?
Hey, great, Dave. Good to be here. It's been a while.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's good to circle back up.
I know, it is. I've been obviously followed you guys. You guys are doing some great stuff out there. And, we've had on, since then, we've had Cheech on and Lance and, we've talked a lot about you guys. Your name comes up a lot. So it's going to be good to get an update here on what you have going. You guys also have purchased a new fly shop, which I want to talk about, or not a new fly shop, a fly shop that's got a great name out there. It's been out there a while. We're going to talk about that and really just kind of get an update. So maybe let's bring it back to you. Since episode 40, that was it. We're above episode 600 now. So it was like
Wow.
5 years ago, I think.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So tell us what's been going on, maybe in the last year or so. What's new with Fly Fish Food?
Yeah, a lot's been going on the last year. Since we talked, we moved into a bigger shop and we're slowly taking over. It's a big building. Well, we now have the whole building. So, but it's been kind of a creep as we've expanded. Luckily, the way it worked out for us, we're able to push the warehouse side of things a little further into the building. And anyway, and then we built out our YouTube. We call our YouTube studio. It's where we do our podcasts, built a soundproof room and get everything all hooked up in there for our videos and podcasts and all that good stuff. But so that's been coming together in the last couple of years, but specifically the last year, we had an opportunity to look at a shop acquisition, and it's something that I had been prepping for, kind of as one possible way to grow the business. And as with anything in growing a business, you have to be careful, but it's risky, but you do what you can to mitigate the risk. And so we acquired what is formerly known as Jimmy's All-Season Angler in Idaho Falls, Idaho, southeast Idaho. For those of you who are not super familiar, we're about an hour outside the park, Yellowstone Park. And anyway, so that's the past year, honestly, that's kind of been our focus. We've changed a lot of stuff with our content. We have a full team with that now. So between the studio and the whole Jimmy's thing, and we've been busy, but we still managed to fish.
You do. So you guys are still getting out, and are you still mixing it up with, kind of still water, streams, all that stuff?
Yeah. It just kind of depends on the timing of how the fishing is on, say, a river, which we're close. We've got the Provo River, which is literally, if I left here, I could be there in 5 minutes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, and it's a blue ribbon trout fishery. We're kind of spoiled in that sense, but we have miles and miles of that up to the first dam, which even the first dam is only 20 minutes from us. So yeah, good options. But yes, still water is still a big part of what we do. But we're really just, we've been doing all sorts of stuff. Fair bit of saltwater. We've been going to Argentina. We take groups down there for trout in Patagonia and Dorado in northern Argentina. We've done Cuba. And anyway, but As far as local goes, none of that. It's trout and some bass, maybe bluegill and crappie. But been getting into it.
Yeah, it seems like you guys, just from the outside, seems like you guys are now kind of everywhere. They say you start out kind of niche down and then you expand out. You've got the big YouTube channel, the fly shop, and now multiple fly shops. I mean, as you guys look ahead, does it seem like, what's next for you guys? You got the podcast, right? Is there a channel out there you haven't really tackled yet that you're thinking about?
I would say, for right now, with the acquisition last year, which was took a lot of time and energy and a ton of money, but we're recovering from that in terms of figuring out how to integrate a new shop into our processes. But next little project is, and we're always kind of on the move somehow or another, but we did secure the final chunk of our building. And so right now we have moved our warehouse up one unit in our building. And then we are turning what used to be the receiving bay in our warehouse is now going to become like a boat showroom.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to focus largely on stillwater boats, but also drift boats and like flycrafts and NRS, Skadden, anybody that has anything that floats on water that you fish from, stand-up paddle boards, kayaks, that sort of thing. So
that's awesome.
That's the big move on the immediate horizon. But yeah, beyond that, I mean, never say never to getting another shop. I've gotten the, I don't want to call it a secret formula because it's not rocket science, but we did learn a lot from this acquisition, and that could be next on the horizon, something else if something pops up as good as this was. But other than that, yeah, we're just creating and fishing and doing all that fun stuff that we call a job.
That's it. I love it. And it's the Jimmy's acquisition is awesome because, it was a well-known name. We've been doing a lot of episodes in that area, and Jimmy's and in fact, I haven't even had Jimmy on yet. I'm hopefully going to work on getting him on. I think he's kind of, retiring partially or whatever and heading out. But yeah, he's just got this great name. So what is it about? Maybe let's talk Jimmy's. Why was Jimmy's the right place? I'm assuming, it was for sale and all that, but why is that shop so special? Because you hear a lot about it.
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. I would say, like, in terms of the fly fishing industry, he's got to be one of the oldest shops around. He originally started in Pocatello, Idaho, I think about 40 years ago, and then it moved to Idaho Falls sometime in the 80s, maybe 85. And my first experience there would have been the early 90s. But he's, being around so long, and Jimmy, if you've met Jimmy and gone in the shop, number one, that he's probably one of the nicest guys that you will ever meet. Super fishy. Like he's just fishing has been his whole life, even growing up before he grew up in Boise. He's got some cool stories fishing with his dad and how he kind of got into the sport and the industry that way. Anyway, fast forward now the last few years. So Jimmy's father had passed away, and they were close and kind of ran the shop together for years and years. And he was just early last year had been thinking more and more about getting out of the industry, retiring kind of a thing. So we were approached with the option, and it's funny because Cheech and I both have had a lot of experience going into Jimmy's. We'd both tied there in their Saturday demo tying sessions, which is really kind of a staple for downtown Idaho Falls in the winter. And we always knew that shop as a tying shop, which it is. I mean, Jimmy's, for people that even have only maybe passed by and dropped in once or twice, they just know that he was known for fly tying aspect of it. And so that became a possibility. And for us being, I guess you could say we're fly tying oriented, and that we're one of the biggest fly tying resources online. but we do sell a lot of other stuff and had been looking at potential second location options for fly fish food. We've been working on or researching and kind of looking at options for a couple of years, nothing super seriously, but when we got this opportunity to chat with Jimmy about his retiring and wanting to move on, we chatted about it, not for very long, because number one, for people who have not been to that area of the country, Idaho Falls is, I don't know how many people live there, 60,000 people in Idaho Falls proper, something like that. And then the greater area there in that corner of the state, you've got, a lot of fine fishing people. But more than anything, if you just say Idaho Falls is your central location and you go an hour in any direction, you're going to find some crazy good trout water. And in fact, when I was in high school, I grew up in southwestern Idaho and southeastern Oregon. So I was, my family's long in the tooth Idahoans. So I always just loved that part of the state, and Yellowstone Park, kind of greater Yellowstone area, and just the amount of fishing options there, coupled with a really good, solid fly shop that's been around and has such a good reputation. So, those two factors were big. It kind of meshed with our timing. And then given that it was a tying shop, Jimmy, in his mind, and he can tell this a lot better than we can, but he obviously didn't want to have the shop just go away or be taken over or purchased by somebody who maybe didn't want to put that much time and effort into the fly tying side, because that's not an easy gig. I mean, fly tying, you've got tons of variations of things in small packages, so it's a little difficult to keep track of. Anyway, so we started talking to Jimmy, made a lot of sense, and then we basically transitioned over last spring, 2023, June 1st, 2023, took ownership. Jimmy literally, you hear about people say they're going to retire and don't, but Jimmy truly did. He still has keys to the shop, still comes in, but that dude does a lot of fishing, and so that's good on him.
That's awesome. He still loves fishing.
Oh, yeah. You're not going to take that out of his blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when, for Jimmy, who wanted to retire and get out there and do fishing, which he's doing a lot of, so timing of everything worked out great. He was kind of in a transition time, I would say, with respect to the staffing there. So we basically hired an entirely new crew, shop manager, assistant shop manager, and a couple of different shop employees. And then probably the biggest piece of feedback that we got from all this is, two Utah guys, although I grew up half my life in Idaho, my family's settlers in Idaho, and Cheech's middle name is Rigby.
Oh, right.
For Rigby, Idaho. And so his family settled that area. So I would say, even though we don't right now technically live in Idaho, we do have strong roots there.
Yeah.
But they were worried about people. I think the loyal customers were worried about us coming in and doing something drastic.
Sure.
But these crazy Utah guys. But we got Madison Hyde Losey. So Madison is one of the Hyde family.
Oh, yeah.
She worked at Hyde growing up, and she's our manager, and she does an excellent job. And then AJ Jorgensen, who'd been a guide and is from Idaho Falls originally, been a guide on the South Fork for years. He's our assistant manager. So that between the two of them, they run the shop. We do manage all the logistics and finances here remotely, but it's been a great change. I would say if you've been into Jimmy's previously, we did change quite a bit. And in the sense of we took out all the fixtures that everything's hanging on and sitting on. We redid really everything inside the shop with no modifications to, say, structure, but we increased the fly selection by about fourfold. We built all new custom fly bins with really excellent lighting. We tripled, almost quadrupled the fly tying selection, which is, I think, a big thing. People were, you're going to be like most other shops and not have many fly tying things. And we said, well, just hold on. And So now that's where we are there. We redid all the rods and reel displays, built a whole new custom front counter. And yeah, but I bet, at the end of the day, we do have, and there's people we've known in that area for years and years. Obviously, people have been loyal to Jimmy for years. And thankfully, as far as we know, most of those people still come in, still find good service, good information, and a good selection of anything fly fishing related, and hopefully more now.
Right. And the fly tying still.
Yeah. So we're carrying more rod brands, more reel brands, more line models. Again, flies. That area of the country is so hatch matchy. It's like a dream. It's just funny. We fished with a guy from the Northeast, and he was mentioning we were fishing a mayfly hatch, and he had just talked about how that's not, that was so cool to him. And it's just, this hatch matching kind of thing. And it's true. If you get up there in that area, there are so many different bugs to imitate. So it's honestly a lot of fun getting the flies and setting up everything up there, because that's like you're making the ultimate shop in the ultimate fishing destination. And from a tire and a, fisher, you're like, wow, it doesn't get much better than this.
Yeah, that's it. So you guys are in it, and it's going, and it's not that far. I mean, what is the drive from, and you guys, are you in Provo, or what's the city you guys are in?
Yeah, so we're in Orem.
Oh, Orem, yeah.
That's where our headquarters, yeah. So it's between Salt Lake and Provo.
Yeah.
We are from our shop, between the shops, it's exactly, I would say, 3.5 hours.
Okay.
So you can, as long as you're not stopping too much to fish, you're good. But relatively, it's all freeway.
Yeah, it's all just shoot up at 15, right? Shoot up 15 all the way.
Yeah. And Jimmy's, for those of you who haven't been, is right downtown Idaho Falls. If you're like flying into Idaho Falls to go to the park or fish to Madison or anything, you literally, we're just right there. Yeah.
Right. So that's the key, is that Idaho Falls, if you're flying in, and we've done this with a couple of events we've done there. Yeah, you fly into Idaho Falls for the most part, grab a car and then go. So it's an easy one. Get off the airport, swing by, stop in and check it out, and then head down. Because you guys get that, I know, at your shop down, your original shop, right? A lot of people because they hear about you online because you're such a big force on YouTube. They just want to stop by. So it sounds like maybe Jimmy's is another place they probably people want to check out, because it's going to be unique.
Yes, exactly. In fact, we've run into a little thing we didn't even think about until now, but we're seeing an increasing number of people that will, let's say, come from California, Arizona, New Mexico, wherever, up to fish, in Southeast Idaho, Southwest Montana, whatever. And they'll stop by both shops. So we, our shop here, we've kind of just grown that, and just really, we've been very deliberate in our product selection and the size of the shop. And then we obviously have the big warehouse and our studio here. So people stop by, we'll give them the grand tour. We even have a little map up on the wall to kind of indicate where they're from. But we're seeing more and more people that are doing that. It's called the fly fishing shop, the fly shop tourism segment. And then they'll go to Jimmy's. So we've got, we get that a lot where they're, oh yeah, we were at Jimmy's this morning, and they're on their way driving back down to wherever, vice versa. But
that's awesome.
It's awesome. Yeah. Fly fishing's a great close-knit community, really, when it all boils down to it.
Yeah. That's what it is. I think the thing about fly fishing, and maybe there's a lot of things like this, but we're doing some surveying and asking our listeners about some things, and it seems like the community, of people and connecting with people is huge. Do you guys find that as well? Is that something do you find that? And then how do you guys build that community? How do you guys make that great for people?
One of the nice things, and I call fly fishing, and there's many, many other sports that would fit the same description, would be a passion industry. So if you're going to work in fly fishing, as an example, you inherently, as long as you are passionate about it, as most people are in the industry, that's an added incentive to kind of be in that space. But as a community, also being a business owner in this industry, it is also very important that we foster good relationships with customers or potential customers, but just everything in general. Like if you look at our content that we deploy, it's 100% free. We're not ever planning on charging people to watch a fly tying tutorial. And so I think that's part of what we say, hey guys, we'll do our best to create what we think some of the best industry content, and that's going to be free. If you like what you see and happen to be needing some hooks, then we happen to sell hooks.
Right.
But one of our, we've got a couple of things with our shop that are kind of non-starters. But the biggest thing is, and we just say, don't be a d-.
Yeah.
That's like number one rule when we're dealing with customers. Because again, these people are just like us. They like to fish. They're learning. Everybody's learning. And so that level of, hey, come on in. This is our place. Make yourself comfortable. We'll help you with what you need. We like fishing just like you. So we try to make it's an approachable environment with the shops. And then specifically online to be able to have a lot of people that we can interact with virtually, many of whom we never see or know. But, when we go to shows, or even very often when we're in an airport or something, you'll have somebody that's, oh, hey, I love your videos.
There you go.
And that's just awesome because you get, Cheech is hard to miss when he's
with the beard and everything.
He's 6'5". Yeah. He's iconic. And so we'll get that, but we just love that when people come up and say hi, because it's just, again, that whole community aspect, and people really, really like that, as do we. So the relationships is a huge, huge part of our business. That's a big chunk of it.
That's it. And I love that the don't be a is perfect, because you do hear some stories of, around there, like the uppity fly shop. And fly fishing had this thing around it, right?
Yes.
Where it was this uppity thing
about it.
Yeah, right. So that seems like it's kind of going away, probably, mainly because of what you just said. A lot of people are realizing, I don't know, it's kind of weird to think that there was a period when that was there, but now that's kind of going away, right?
Yes, that, you nailed it on the head. And I think I would attribute this, because I've noticed the exact same thing. In today's world where it's like immediate feedback, if you've gone into a shop and you were treated poorly, or anywhere, any business, if you were treated poorly, there's a high likelihood that is going to come out.
Yeah.
And maybe one or two people know, but if it's consistent, it will come out, and that will start to show. And we've seen shops, we've heard people mention, I used to go into this shop and they used to be just so mean or just not friendly or whatever. I think that changes because there will be some feedback. And I also think that there is a lot more, I want to say competition, but also options for consumers in our industry to consume content. So you think, you're thinking goods. So I got to go buy some flies, or, I need this feather to tie this fancy fly or whatever. So you're thinking the actual product that you have, but there's also the content aspect of it. And so as a business, if you're going to do well in the industry, you have to have both that customer service down, and you need to have, people are going to come in and have a good experience coming in. And then virtually, if you are at least active on social media, so that people who are loyal to you, they need to have a good experience there too. And I think back in the day, it wasn't like two parts. It was one. It was like the shop personality. And that was largely determined by whoever's greeting somebody coming in. It's just so much more. They talk about omni-channel in terms of selling in a business, but I think we're talking omni-face now. Like, you can't just be the jerk at the shop and then be, oh, hey, I'm making this cool video, guys, come on down.
Oh, right.
It can't be that way, right? It's got to be consistent.
Yeah, it's all transparent. One of my first, kind of online marketing mentors, Roy, was this guy called Pat Flynn. He's still around, and he had this thing called Smart Passive Income, right? But he was transparent. He had his income stream on his website. And it was the first time when I learned about online business, I was like, wow, this guy's totally transparent. He's a super amazing, nice guy. But, you hear a lot about the online marketing stuff, right? The spamming. There is spammers and scammers out there. But I feel when you run into somebody who kind of shows you that way, right? Like, what's your take online? Because you guys, you're on YouTube, which can get kind of vicious. How do you guys, I know you balance it. Like, how do you make that a great experience for people?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest downside to the online world is, and if we had some time, I would play you this voicemail we got over the weekend. And these are not uncommon, but you have to deal with some people that get pretty upset over what I would say, like, bro, we sent you the wrong hooks.
Right.
Our bad. We'll make it right. And you keep the bad hooks we sent or whatever.
Yeah.
But they just lose their mind over something that's like, hey, this is fishing. after all.
Right.
Like we're pursuing a hobby. So yeah, there's a lot of, when you're online, you kind of exposing yourself to a lot of criticism just from rando people that don't like the way you fish, to, interfacing with customers that may have had a bad experience with either, they could have had a bad day. And that's above all. It's just, we got to kind of take a breath and say, hey, not everybody's going to be peachy, rosy, nice, every day, all day. But,
right.
And then when all said and done, we have to also work through actual issues. The post office lost the package, or something arrived broken, or whatever, So, but I think above all, for instance, if you go to our YouTube channel, Instagram probably is not as vicious.
Yep. But YouTube is kind of known, right? YouTube is known as kind of having some of the hardcore comments.
Yeah. But our secret weapon we have is Cheech is kind of the master troll.
Right.
And I don't mean troll like he's not mean, but he's
good.
Comebacks are freaking hilarious.
Well, he reminds me too. I've heard that about Cheech, and then also Tom Rosenbaum. I've heard that he kind of loves that a little bit too, getting in there and just being like, his style just works perfectly to, what do you call it?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, so somebody's going to put a crazy comment on YouTube and be a jerk. We're not going to come back with jerkness. We're going to come back with being nice or funny.
Yeah.
And the crazy cool thing about that is that people just don't know what to do with that.
Right.
Wait a minute. I was trying to be mean.
Right.
You can't be nice to me. But luckily, those are like few and far between, relatively speaking. Most of the interactions are.
Exactly. Well, tell me this. I want to hear on the fly shop, back in the day, I grew up around a little tiny fly shop, and fly tying, we always thought of ourselves, as fly tying was a big part of it. Talk about that today, because there's a lot of different shops out there. What makes Jimmy's the fly tying? How is it different from, say, a shop that doesn't really focus on fly tying? And obviously you have materials, but is that something you guys thought about a lot?
Oh, yeah. If you knew the depth of analysis and planning that goes into crafting our product mix for fly tying, and then also making sure we are optimized with minimum order quantities, safety stock. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the background from a pure logistics and business side that would not even enter most people's minds, including most probably in our industry. My background is business consulting, which I did with SAP for 20 some odd years. And so I got kind of just by nature of being in that industry, I got decent at managing inventory and more specifically processes and platforms like that. But probably the biggest challenge with that fly tying and with any shop is that, number one, you have to have space because even though they're small things, there's a lot of them. And I think you also have to understand the consumer today. Like even 20 years ago, you could go into a shop, and I had a shop that I would go into and I tried to support locally, but it wouldn't take more than 3 or 4 times going in there and not finding what I needed that I would start to look online.
Yeah.
So that's, let's say 20 years ago, that was the case a little bit. Well, today it's like the case 100%. And I don't mean this is not like a knock at anybody who's not specializing or doing fly tying, quote unquote, right. I don't think there's a right or wrong, but
yep.
I would say the biggest, so I just say you got to either be all in or all out.
Yeah. You got to have it. You got to have it all.
Yes. Like if you're going to invest in the space, so you've got to figure out kind of revenue per square foot. And if you're doing that and it makes sense, and fly tying, again, depending on how you position it, can do that. But if you're not all in and you're not willing to reorder very, very frequently across the board and learn the habits of customers and then educate, there's a huge component of that. If you think of a shop in general, somebody walks in, there's a level of education that needs to occur for that person to either purchase or learn something to purchase. And if you look at, say, the space that rods and reels and waders and boots and flies maybe, let's say, take up, the education, it's there, how to cast, how to tie knots, how to read water. There's some, lots of learning. But if you go into the fly tying side and now you start to go, what are the skills and the education opportunities on the fly tying side? Holy crap, you're talking like every microchasm of section on the wall has got an education piece to it that's unique. You don't get that on waders. Like, okay, I can tell you what the features of these waders are, but that's like it. And all of them are the same. You just put them on and go in the water. Not so with fly tying. So I think if you're going to really take fly tying anywhere beyond just having your Tiemco 100s and some UTC thread and just kind of your basics, if you want to go beyond that, it's, I think, a huge step, because now you're starting to look at the education process. You got to look at the inventory, all the logistics of that. So it gets very complex. And so I think with Jimmy's especially, we said, hey, we're going to go in. We already know really what a good product mix is from tying. And knowing that he was already known as a fly tying shop made this a natural thing. But again, we went in, analyzed products. There were some that we kicked to the curb that were either older or we knew empirically did not sell well. And so we would swap out with something similar that sold better. And this is just, again, looking at data is nothing more than that. It's not like, oh, we don't like this type of material.
Right. It's just the data.
But it's, yeah, I mean, and at the end of the day, a lot of this that we do, well, with any business is hopefully data-based. And that's going to help you make some of the choices, hopefully be successful.
This year, I ventured into the heart of eastern Idaho's Yellowstone Teton territory, where the fish were larger than life and the waters held the secrets of the best fly fishing out west. With crystal clear rivers like the Henry's Fork and the South Fork of the Snake, and enough lakes to keep you going all year long, make your way to Yellowstone Teton territory and embark on a journey to one of North America's finest fly fishing destinations. It's time to experience eastern Idaho for yourself and support this podcast at the same time. So basically, if you walk into Jimmy's today and you're into fly tying and you want to tie, you name the pattern that's out there, you guys likely will have the materials there on site.
Yeah, very, very likely. And like I mentioned, the other aspect of a shop that does fly tying, and there's a lot of good ones, look at Kill Gallup, and Charlie Craven, on the East Coast Precision, and there's Jay Stockard, of course. Anyway, people that we know and like have done it extremely well. And so that's, those are good examples, again, of some, or Schultz, like in Michigan, of these shops that have figured that out, and they, number one, they know their customer and they know what they're going to be tying given the area. And then they also know how to service those customers, whether it's like video content or come and tie flies at night with me.
Yeah, you're educating them. So you basically, let's take this, because I love the new beginner. We've been doing some stuff where we have new people coming into our, kind of podcast channel and stuff. And I'm thinking like, a beginner thing, you come into because I tell people all the time, it's like, hey, you can learn to cast, you can get videos, you can do this. But the first thing is, if you have a fly shop locally, go in there and check it out. So if you have a beginner that's just brand new to fly fishing, they just found our podcast, they're listening now and they're thinking, man, okay, I have this fly shop nearby. Let's just say it's Jimmy's. What are you telling that person to know about before he comes into the shop, or that person comes into the shop? How do they navigate? Do they just go in there and start talking, or should they have some tools behind them before they jump in?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We get that one all the time. I would say first is know where you're going to be fishing and kind of how you want to fish. So there's two categories here. You've got the new tyer, but not a new fisher. And then you also have a person that doesn't fish much that wants to get into tying kind of at the same time, which is certainly doable and maybe even better in some cases. But we would say, first off, know where you're going, kind of what type of fishing. You don't have to dial it in to say, oh, yeah, I'm fishing in emergers today. But, kind of know the style. So if you're going to say nymph, then, that narrows it down. Then what we normally do, and Jimmy's is the same as our Orem shop, is kind of figure out where they are in terms of tools and materials. True beginners, we actually have a whole fly tying 101 class on our website, and we put together, filmed Cheech, just taking people through the basics to, relatively complex, and then through to making, so the first few would be more mechanical things like attach your thread, whip finish, dub, those types of things. And then it goes into a fly. So like a zebra midge or a brassy or a woolly bugger, things that are relatively simple to tie. They don't take a ton of materials. And then we tell people to pick 1, 2, 3 beginner level tutorials. And again, these tutorials would all be on YouTube on our channel. And so it's step by step, walk you through it. And then we also list all the materials. So if somebody said, hey, I want to tie a zebra midge, you go and look at the tutorial, you walk into your local shop and you say, hey, I want to tie a zebra midge. Well, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be able to help you and get you the materials you need, and you're on your way. So from a beginner standpoint, most shops should be able to at least outfit you with the stuff you need. The education piece, not all shops have people that are sitting there ready to instruct somebody on how to tie a specific fly. Our shop's a little different where that's one of the, in the vetting process, somebody that works here, they tend to have to be a relatively decent tyer, or at least know how to read recipes to know, oh, we don't have this material, you can sub this or whatever. But yeah, so that's how it would work. You just go in and and we really see people go from there beyond the beginner course that we have. We also have a series of what we call skill builders.
Oh, yeah.
Those are a very skill-specific series of YouTube videos that there's 2 categories. We have fly tying and fly fishing, and they each will consist of 3 skills. So the fly tying one, it may be an advanced skill like stacking deer hair, or it could be something as simple as creating a dubbing rope. And we mix and match all these skills. I think I don't know how many we've got. We've gotten hundreds of videos that are similar, but the series of skill builders, I think we just started them late last year. They've been going extremely well. And this, again, is just pure teaching and hacks, whatever you want to call it. These are just free education. We call it edutainment.
Oh, right.
So we're hopefully allowing people to be entertained at the same time they learn stuff.
Yeah. Educate, entertain. Perfect.
That's how it would look.
That's how it look. Good.
Yeah.
So let's just take it to Jimmy. Somebody is going out and they're going to fish the Henry's Fork for the first time, and maybe they're brand new. This might be a challenge, but they're heading out there, and then they stop by Jimmy's, and they know where they're going. They know they're probably going to be fishing dry flies, and they're going to stop by Jimmy's and ask the staff, like, hey, I'm new to fly fishing. What do I need? And then the staff's going to be able to get them dialed in with the types of. I mean, I guess that in this situation, if you're a beginner, you're probably not tying tiny dry flies either. My guess, right? There's this level.
Yeah, that's a good point. It depends too. I mean, if there is something real, like right now, we've got the beta hatch going on. And it's been really, really, really good. And so we will have a beginner come in that maybe has tied the zebra midges and the pheasant tails or the hare's ears, and like, oh man, I think the fish are coming up. What do I tie? We get a lot of that. And so I would say they're intermediate tyers or even intermediate fisher people that are, hey, I want to try my hand at this. So we can give them, here's a dry fly that's simple and it will catch fish. And then it's awesome to see people do that. They go home, tie some flies. They come in the next day like, oh yeah, I went out to the river and caught a bunch of fish with this thing.
Yeah.
And that's where you put it all together. And that's a lot of fun. Idaho specifically, you've got especially in the summer, you've got so many bugs overlap, and it's like, okay, take your pick. And that makes it so much, between Henry's and South Fork and the park. And there's so much water around there. Name your hatch. It's probably going on at some point.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. It's pretty, is that place, that area, how is it different from the Provo area and the fishing? Why is, you know what I mean? I know the Provo's famous too, but what's the big difference between the areas?
Number one, Provo's proximity to the Wasatch Front, which, you've got millions of people literally within rock throwing distance of most, so it's right off the freeway.
Yep. It
is a little bit more crowded, I would say, just kind of at a day-to-day basis. Provo's walk and wade. The Provo's also fairly, there's some other fishing opportunities around, but it's kind of like the main one.
Yeah.
Because it's got so many fish. But if you look at, say, the Henry's, you got fewer people overall, obviously a lot of destination anglers, but it's just much bigger water. So you look at just Henry's in the South Fork, for instance, much, much bigger. So logistically, you're floating, or if you're wading, you're wading a bit and then covering more water, driving out to another put in. The Provo's really just walk and wade.
Oh, okay.
Hatch-wise, Provo's really good with betas, has some great caddis stuff, some drakes. If you look at Henry's, though, it's like there's so many things going on in the South Fork. So I'd say the bug life is a little stronger in kind of what we would say are classic match the hatch scenarios up on those bigger rivers.
Is the Provo a tailwater?
Yeah, it's a tailwater, basically 2 tailwaters and then a freestone. So you've got coming out of the Uinta Mountains, it flows into Jordanelle Reservoir. At that point, it's a freestone to the headwaters, out of Jordanelle through the town of Midway and Heber towns. It's tailwater. And then it flows into Deer Creek Reservoir, and then Deer Creek Reservoir is at the top of Provo Canyon. And then from there, it flows all the way to the lake as a tailwater.
Nice. So we're sticking on this little beginner track a little bit here, but let's say somebody hasn't been into a fly shop yet and you want to educate them to know, how to go into a fly shop, what to be thinking about, because you hear some of these stories about somebody goes in a fly shop, they get a bunch of education, then they don't buy anything. And maybe the shop owner doesn't like that. First of all, do you think that's true? Do you think that's true? That also, what would be your maybe 3 tips for somebody that's their first time going into a fly shop? What do you tell that person?
First off, I would just say, be prepared for even a really nice person on a bad day can maybe not rub you right. So just go in with an open mind. Anybody that works retail, you're going to have some bad days. And I personally haven't had very many bad experiences with any shop. And I used to travel a lot and I would go to a lot of shops. So it would be, expect the unexpected.
Yeah. Don't be a
yeah, exactly. On the flip side. And then, when you go in, I would say, be prepared to at least answer some questions, because if you go in and say, well, I'm just beginning, where do I even start? That's a very tough answer to give. It's okay, well, where do you start? And so we typically go through some questions, kind of figure out where the person is. And then the other thing, and this is probably the biggest suggestion, that the most helpful that I would give any beginner going in, is even if you know some stuff, kind of forget it. I've seen this play out multiple times where, and I don't mean just pretend like you don't know, but if somebody's giving you some advice, there's always the one-upper. And it's like somebody who comes in that clearly doesn't know very well what they're doing, but they're trying to make themselves look like they know what they're doing. And it becomes more and more obvious they don't know, but then they're also not as inclined to take advice and input. So set aside hey, I got to show these guys that I kind of know what I'm doing. Yeah, who cares? We're all, everybody's learning at different paces. Just go in, soak it up. I'll even do that. I'll go in and to a shop and ask questions, and I kind of let them do their spiel, and, I'll learn something. So those would be probably my top, is just kind of chill out and go in with a positive, good attitude.
Yeah. And on that same line, you hear this about the guide trip too, sometimes where people aren't that good at letting the guide them, right? They come up with their own ideas of what they should do. They don't listen. The guide tells them what to do, and then that person, right? That's never a good thing to be doing on a guide trip.
Yep.
Probably. So same thing. Cool. All right. So that gives us a little firepower for somebody kind of new to it. I want to hear more about this boats, here a little bit, because I love the boats. We've done a whole drift boat season on this podcast. We've had talked rafts, everything. How do you guys choose what boats you're going to have in that lineup? There's so many. You got Air, NRS. There's all these amazing rafts and drift boats. Like, do you already have that lined out, or how do you do that?
Yeah, we've got it mostly lined out. We're just kind of starting, if you think of in terms of price and use case for these boats, let's just call them all boats because they're going to float somebody that fishes. Then you're obviously looking at, on the lower end, you're looking at entry-level float tubes, and everybody and their dog's going to probably at some point own an entry-level float tube.
Yeah. So float tubes those are still a good thing to get. Float tubes are still used out there on lakes and all that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I would say I probably use a float tube a little bit more than I used to, because I've started to get a little bit like, if we're going to a series of lakes in the high country, rather than worry about my pontoon boat or even like the flycraft, which we can take on a 4x4, so if we're going crazy. But it's just, if I'm looking at flycraft, which is comfortable, versus a float tube, I'll probably opt for the float tube on some of these high mountain lakes, just because it's easier to set up and down and transport. Yeah. So we try to cover all the bases from your entry level float tube, and then all the way through to, say, a drift boat. We work with hide drift boats and flycraft. And so, but as you go up from the entry level kind of lower price stuff into the drift boat range and the flycrafts, raft kind of style boats, luckily there's not as many options to choose there. So flycraft in and of itself kind of almost created a genre of fishing craft. And so, we'll have a couple of models there. We've known Dave Skadden for a while, and his boats are really good. But he's also got everything from kind of your entry level float tube all the way up to drift boat style raft.
Dave's got some cool stuff. I saw him at the show recently this year, and
Yeah.
he's got these new braces, right, that are foam. They're inflated, but it's really hard and rigid. I got in the boat, and so he's got a bunch of stuff out there, but I feel like he's always on the innovation edge, right? That's maybe Skadden's thing. He's always trying new stuff.
Yep. The nice thing about Dave is he does fish from the boats a lot, and so his business has been crafted just over the years based on function and need. And so obviously somebody who's heading a business that works on fishing crafts, it's nice that he fishes and knows what's involved. But yeah, you'll see he'll innovate stuff that other people will copy eventually. It is typically how we've seen some of that go. But the boats are great. So we'll have most of his lineup here. And one thing that's different that we don't do now is we've decided to start shipping the boats. They're difficult in general to ship a big raft, but we've been working on some options there. So on some of them, there'll be some cost to ship them. Others may not. But the idea is that we'll try to have all these fancy boats for display, but we can also send them to people.
Wow, this is cool. So, okay. So, and then the float tube, give us that on just what's the float tube you love if somebody was going to grab a float tube. Do you have one model, one style that you really like?
So the style that I really like right now that is a new model from Skadden.
Yeah.
It's called a Slash. It's basically kind of it uses the stand-up paddleboard rigid style of a platform, and it sits between two pontoon basically. So that forms your seat. It weighs, 12 pounds or something crazy. But then that little platform that you sit on doubles as a backpack frame.
Oh, wow.
And so,
nice.
Yeah, so you basically deflate the pontoons, fold them in back onto the platform thinger, get your straps, and then put whatever other gear you need. And then you're hiking a really capable sitting off the water style boat up to a high elevation lake with it weighs as much as a pair of boots.
Right.
Kind of a thing.
Wow.
So that is, I think, a game changer.
I'm looking at it now. That's Skadden Slash, the backcountry float tube. This is the cool thing is, and it's kick, right? You got your fins, so there's no oars. So essentially, it is a float tube, but it's a pontoon float tube, right? You're up out of the water.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, I think we're doing pretty well here. I think we're going to take it away today. This is our, it's Monday, but this will be like our Fly Shop Friday. You mentioned the dog. Right? You had a dog earlier that was. Or we talked off air on the bone. So let's talk shop dog for a start there as we take it out of here. What kind of dog? What's your shop dog?
Shop dogs. We have technically 4 of them.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I've got 3. I've got a 65-pound Sheepadoodle named Guinevere. We've got Zeppelin, who is a jet black poodle, and he's also annoying. So we got Black Dog.
Yeah.
We've got Gwen. And then the third dog from my clan is an English Bulldog named Scotty. So Gwen and Zeppelin, they come every day with me. And then Cheech brings Squatch, who's a Wirehaired Pointing Griffon. And she's been in the shop since she was a pup, like literally for her whole life. So the 3 core dogs are here every day. And then Scotty will come to visit a couple times a week. And yeah, so they hang out with us upstairs or down where we have our studios upstairs. But yeah, they'll roam the shop too. If you are a dog person and come in, you will get a very warm welcome because the dogs like to smell other dogs, but they're nice dogs at least.
Yeah. Nice. There you go. I love the shop dogs. And you guys don't have any cats there. It's all shop dogs.
Well, we do have cats that live on the side of the building, and the dogs are keen on the cats. And as I pull up in the parking lot, let the dogs out every once in a while, if the cat's dumb enough to make an appearance, the dogs will chase it down.
Done. So right.
The cats still live around here, but they're not like very visible residents.
Perfect. Okay, good. Well, and let's see, this is our rapid fire round, and we'll take it out of here. So a couple of questions I've been having. So the Shop Talk podcast, you guys still have that going strong, and give us an update there.
Yeah, our podcasting is probably our least consistent of everything that we do, but we do have the dedicated podcast space here, and we try to do well. Let's see, we were at a 1 a week kind of clip for a bit there, and we've kind of pulled off to about once a month. We've got some other ones planned. We try to, when people are in town for like IFTD or somebody's just in town visiting, we try to get people on. Yeah, the guys from Orvis and just different people on, just kind of randomly. But yeah, we're still cranking away with that.
Yeah.
It is a lot of fun.
How do you like doing that? Yeah, I know you've done some interviews as kind of on there, and I saw one recently where I think you showed up. I think Cheech and Lance weren't there, but as the host, do you enjoy hosting the podcast? Is that different from the YouTube stuff you do?
Yeah, way different. The podcast is nice because it's just very laid back, just having conversation. YouTube videos, usually there's some stuff going on in the background, or we're trying to accomplish, XYZ as we film, whether it's like on the water fishing or whatever. It's nice. We've had some great topics, great conversations. So it's fun. Yeah, it is nice kind of digging into what people have going on and realizing people are sometimes way funnier than you would have thought, or had some cool stories. But yeah, it's awesome.
Cool. You're loving it. That's good to hear. That's going to keep going strong. So let's go back. We're going to stay on this beginner track a little bit and take it back. I can't remember your story. I know we'll put a link to episode 40 where you talked about your background on fly fishing, but your beginner self, you're getting into fly fishing. What would be that tip you'd give yourself back then? You could give yourself from what you know now, you give that beginner self.
In my case, I wish I had taken either a guided trip, and I understand not everybody can afford that. The reason I mention that is because it really busts the learning curve.
Yeah.
And if you were to do that, let's say, and even somebody that's not from the Western Rockies or whatever, if you're going to make a trip out and have this expense, you may as well just do 1 day guided trip and tell them, hey, I'm learning. This is what I want to get out of this day. Like 9 times out of 10, the guide's going to curtail the trip to that. So, and that is such a good learning experience, just to lay it out there and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here, or I need to learn XYZ a little better. I would just, if it were me getting into it, I would say, hey, let's just skip all this learning on my own junk and dive right in. That would be probably my biggest thing. Now, I understand that's not feasible for everybody. Beyond that, I would say, assume that there's always more that you don't know, because that keeps you questioning, can I do better? It keeps you questioning, is there something I'm missing? That's what makes a good fisherman. When people are locked into this whole concept of, oh, well, I already know this, so I'm, in my own mind, I'm the pro.
Right.
And they really don't know what they don't know, because they're not willing to assume that there's more out there. And we see this a lot. Like somebody, oh, I've been fishing for 20 years. I'm like, yeah, you've been fishing twice a year for 20 years doing the exact same thing in the exact same location.
Yeah.
I would still say you're a beginner. And so, yeah, I would just say be open to that, learning, understand, don't assume you know.
That's right. No, that's perfect. Love that. And we've talked a little bit just on some of the business end of it, but with Jimmy's, I mean, obviously that's a great location. As you guys look out, I mean, I know you're selling all over the place, all over the country, the world, stuff like that, but
yeah,
where would be that next area? Do you look and say, oh, wow, maybe the East Coast, or do you just start picking out the Western states? Or do you feel like, I'm sure you guys probably don't have it all lined out, but, how do you even choose, right? How do you choose where to go next?
I would say, and I'm not saying we're doing this, because I'm going to get some emails about this, but I will just put it out there. Boise is very attractive to us. And I would say the Front Range, even though there's a ton of shops along the Front Range, I think that's another place that we would consider. I'm not saying that's like we're actively going out looking, but if there were an opportunity that came up, those would probably be two potentials. We've also looked at some really weird ones that I'm not going to mention where, but some crazy opportunities that would be kind of combo shop lodge.
All right.
Set up. We actually get a lot of people approaching us to either co-brand, or I don't even know what you want to call it, but kind of help, but run more of the shop side of things or a tying side of things. So who knows? I mean, you may see a Fly Fish Food branded corner of a store pop up somewhere crazy.
Right. It sounds like you keep your options open. You're not crossing out anything. You're willing to look at anything.
Yeah, we're willing to look at anything. And I think we actually did a podcast on getting into the industry kind of from a business standpoint. And that's probably been our most, I probably had the biggest response and feedback to us on people that, I find this very intriguing. Here's some questions I have. And so we get a lot of that. And in amongst those are some, hey, what have you ever considered doing something here? And so we've actually had some dialogues with some interesting people and interesting concepts because of that.
Nice.
But yeah, never say never. I mean, right now, like I said, we're really just, Jimmy's is running full bore. We've got our new boat stuff going on and, and that sort of thing. There's plenty to do.
Yeah, you're busy.
No shortage. Yeah, I mean, we're just having fun. I've got some kind of personal things that we're looking to improve on with our business that we're working on as well. My personal, I mean, things that are my projects, my little pet projects here that I'm like, all right, got to squeeze some more juice out of this lemon.
How do you balance that in your time? I'm guessing you add a new fly shop. That's going to be more time that you have to put to that, although you put a staff in place. How do you balance that where you keep, it seems like you're adding more, but it's still you, Cheech.
Yeah.
You guys, how do you manage your time and do it all?
Well, the biggest thing is you have to hire good people. And with any business, when you scale it, if you don't have I want to call it a succession plan. It's not really succession, but it's more of an offloading delegation plan. If as a business owner, you don't have that outlined, you are always going to want to keep that close to your vest. And that's typically incongruent to a growth strategy. Like the one thing that you have as an entrepreneur or a business owner that you cannot scale is your time.
Yeah.
So if you look at it that way, you have to analyze what can you do with your time? What are things that you can do and you only can do currently? And what are things other people can do? And once you get that nailed down and start to understand a bigger picture, how you scale it. So in our case, we hire good people that can handle tasks and things. And my hope is always better than I can. And so I'm really good at some stuff. There's also some stuff that I'm okay at. But if I can pay somebody to do better than I can, then that's a win.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to it, I think the biggest challenge for any business owner is just that, how do you schedule your time so that you're making the best use of it? But also, like last week, we went and fished the Green River here in Utah, spent the whole day fishing, and I don't like to come back to a mess. So I try to make, I do need to build the time to fish into my schedule, if for nothing else, mental sanity, but also content and that. So it's really just, you take your time, slice and dice what you can, do what you can, what you can't, rather than not doing it, have somebody else do it. That's kind of how it has to work.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that's a great tip, a great reminder there. Well, let's take it away. And going back to Idaho Falls, have you spent a lot of time out there? Do you know the Idaho Falls itself, the city, a lot, or is that kind of, are you learning about it?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously still learning. I've spent a fair bit of time there in the last year and a half, and we participated in the fly tying and fly fishing expo they had there.
Oh yeah,
and have there every spring, which is a phenomenal event. Now that it's in the new Mountain America Center there off the freeway, even better. Yeah, so we try to be as involved as we can personally. We've done several different events up in the area, whether they're fundraising or going out fishing with somebody that comes in or whatever. So yeah, we're up there quite a bit. Like I said, I grew up in various areas of Idaho and grew up, like for me as a kid, going on vacation was Yellowstone Park.
Right.
Yeah. In the back of the 1982 Toyota pickup with the shell.
Oh, nice.
My dad just threw us in the back. Hey, hope you don't get carbon monoxide poisoning back there.
There you go.
And here's a sleeping bag for padding. So, so I've been familiar with the area for a long time, and we love fishing there, and it's pretty unique.
Cool. Would you have one place, do you know it well enough to recommend if somebody's passing through like a dinner or some food on the way?
Well, so my favorite restaurant in Idaho Falls is probably Stockman's. It's a steakhouse, but it's like a good Idaho steakhouse.
Yeah.
You got Idaho's got potatoes, of course, but man, they're pretty good with the cattle and the beef. But it's also a good quality restaurant. And there's a good number of different options there in Idaho Falls, which we really enjoy.
Perfect. Stockman's. All right, good. Well, we're just, we're building this trip for somebody that's going to be coming through. So awesome, Chris. I think I'll leave it there. We'll send everybody out to flyfishfood.com and they can check that out, your YouTube channel as usual. And yeah, I guess I'm going to hopefully track down Jimmy. I'm going to keep working on that and see if we can get him on and hear more of the whole story of the shop. That's my goal. But I appreciate all your time and all the great stuff you guys do, and excited to keep in touch with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Another great one with Curtis and the Fly Fish Food Gang. We got an inside view of inside the fly shop, the backbone of the fly fishing industry. We all love the fly shop, so if you get a chance, support Fly Fish Food, support Jimmy's, or support your local fly shop this week. I hope you enjoyed that chat with Curtis. We're going to continue staying in touch with the great stuff they have going there, and hope this year we're going to put together more good stuff with them as well. And I'd like to know, what is your local fly shop? That's the question of the week. Question of the week, local fly shop. It is Friday, and it's Fly Shop Friday. Send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com, if you haven't checked in with me in quite a while, or if you're brand new. I would love to hear from you, and I'd love to hear where your local outdoor store. If you don't have a fly shop nearby, where are you getting your outdoor stuff? Next episode, let's check it out right now. What do we have going? This coming Monday, a big episode. We've got, we're getting back into spay. We've got a big spay episode. We're going to be going up to Alaska and talking about swinging for king salmon. You got to stay in for that one because that's going to be good. Steve Morrow, he's going to break it all out Monday, and you do not want to miss this one. You do not want to miss this one next week. It's going to be one of the best that we put together in a while, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for checking out Travel today. I hope you can live that dream trip this year, or just get back into that stream right in your backyard and experience that road less traveled.